The penthouse boardroom of the Cassadine Tower glittered with cold, impersonal luxury. Steel beams polished like mirrors, floor-to-ceiling glass that framed the skyline like a billionaire's portrait of conquest. It was a kind of room where empires were whispered into existence over espresso and ego. In the center of the room, under a golden chandelier that cost more than a family home, the CEO sat with her arms folded, legs crossed, smirk radiating power like a weapon. She wore no jewelry save for a single silver rook-shaped cufflink. Her name was Victoria Cassadine, and she was a kind of woman the world both worshipped and feared, a chess grandmaster turned venture capitalist turned queen of a corporate empire built on ruthless strategy. She didn't usually make bets, but today she was bored. "Beat me in chess," she said, her eyes locked onto a man with callous hands and a faded janitor's badge clipped to his shirt, "and I'll marry you." The laughter that followed was immediate and electric, bouncing off the glass and concrete like a slap. The executives around her, all men in tailored suits, laughed not because it was funny, but because Victoria had spoken. And when Victoria spoke, you laughed or you disappeared. The janitor stood at the back of the room, mop handle clutched like a staff, eyes quiet, unreadable. His name tag read Samuel, though most called him Sam. He was 65, black, hunched slightly from years of lifting and bending and being ignored. But in that moment, he looked at her, not through her, not around her, but at her, and something in his gaze did not flinch. He took a step forward. The smirk on Victoria's face widened as a small wooden board was brought out and placed on the table by an assistant trembling with silent laughter. The executives leaned in, sensing a show. Victoria brushed a strand of obsidian hair behind her ear and said, "You want to play white or black, Sam?" "Black," he said simply. More laughter, more eyes rolling. One man whispered, "He doesn't even know white moves first." Victoria set the pieces swiftly, like a predator arranging a trap. But Sam didn't watch her hands. His eyes were on the board as if it was something sacred, something older than the room, older than the tower, as if it held secrets only he remembered. Victoria played her first move with the confidence of a woman who had beaten world champions, pawn to e4. Her fingers tapped the clock. Sam didn't hesitate. Pawn to e5. A flicker of acknowledgement crossed her eyes. She leaned in. Knight to f3. Tap. Then, Sam moved his knight, c6. Victoria blinked once. Was that? No, surely not. She played bishop to c4, classic and aggressive, her signature Italian game opening. Sam, without emotion, played knight to d4. The room fell quiet. One of the younger analysts leaned forward, squinting at the board. Is that? Victoria's eyebrows narrowed. She looked again. Her bishop was suddenly hanging, exposed. Her queen's defense compromised. She frowned, tapped the clock. Bold move. Sam said nothing. Then Victoria, now clearly intrigued, played knight takes d4. Sam responded instantly. Queen to h4. Check. The silence was thick as syrup. Someone coughed. Victoria leaned in, eyes scanning, fingers suddenly twitching. She moved her only piece that could defend, pawn to g3. Sam adjusted the board with slow, reverent fingers. Bishop takes e4. Checkmate. It took a moment. A full, pulsing moment. Then the room exploded, not in applause, but in gasps, stunned silence, a flurry of whispered "That's fool's mate." And no way. He set her up. Victoria didn't move. Her hands were frozen midair, like a woman reaching for a falling crown. Her eyes were on the board, unblinking, as if the pieces had betrayed her. Slowly, almost reverently, she looked up at Sam. "You knew what I was doing," she said, voice suddenly stripped of its icy lacquer. Sam gave a small nod. "Since your first move." Someone let out a laugh, nervous and high-pitched. No one joined. Victoria stood slowly, as if gravity had doubled. She looked at the board again, then at her empire around her, men who were no longer laughing, only staring. "I keep my word," she said finally, "but I want to know who you are." Sam leaned on his mop like it was a cane. "Used to teach at MIT, before my son got sick. Then my wife passed. Cleaning floors pays insurance better than checkmating students." A gust of silence swept through the room like a cold wind. Victoria blinked. You threw away your life for your family. I didn't throw it away, Sam said. I just made a different move. She looked down at the chessboard, then back up at the man who had dismantled her in 3 moves. To be continued. But the story was far from over. That night, the media exploded. The clip leaked, grainy security footage of Billionaire's CEO getting checkmated by Janitor in under a minute. TikTok spun it into a meme. Twitter crowned Sam the Grandmaster Custodian. Talk shows ran segments about his past. A former MIT chess champion. A man who'd walked away from glory for family. The public was ravenous. They loved him. And they began to ask questions. Why was he cleaning floors? Why hadn't anyone noticed him before? Victoria watched it unfold from her glass fortress, scotch in hand. She had won every game she'd ever played. Until now. And the strange thing was, she didn't feel humiliated. She felt seen. For the first time in years, someone had looked at her without fear, without flattery, just with truth. She called her boardroom back the next morning. I'm making a new appointment, she said, her voice slicing the air like a bishop on a long diagonal. Samuel is now Chief Strategy Officer. Gasps, protests, objections. She silenced them all. And we're building a chess education fund in his name. Start with 10 million. Sam resisted at first. He didn't want power. But Victoria was relentless. Not with seduction, though the world made joke about the marriage bet, but with something else, curiosity. Over months, they spent hours together, talking, arguing, laughing, playing. She introduced him to ballrooms. He introduced her to jazz clubs where no one knew her name. She taught him how to command a boardroom. He taught her how to play the blues on an old upright piano hidden in the basement of the Casadine Tower. And slowly, very slowly, they began to orbit each other not as CEO and janitor, but as 2 survivors of very different wars. He, of love and loss. She, of ambition and isolation. One evening, she set up the chessboard again in the same room where it all began. No tricks this time, she said. Just a game. Sam sat, smiled. Winner gets what? She smirked. Dinner. He moved his pawn. She moved hers. The game stretched hours. Neither willing to yield. Neither playing for blood. At the 48th move, she looked up and said, I wasn't joking, you know, about marrying the man who could beat me. Sam paused. I wasn't playing for that. She leaned forward. I know. And then she moved her rook. It was a mistake. Sam smiled, shifted his queen, and checkmate. But this time, the room was empty. There was no applause, no audience, just the sound of the city far below and the hum of 2 lives shifting closer. Victoria stood. Sam stood. She extended her hand. He took it, and somewhere far away, on a chessboard older than empires, the pieces realigned again. They didn't speak of it again, not for days. The board had been left as it was, frozen in checkmate like a memory trapped in amber. Victoria returned to her office, Sam to his modest apartment in the south end of the city where the wallpaper peeled in the corners and a brass lamp flickered when it rained. But something had shifted, not in a loud, cataclysmic way, but in the quiet way tectonic plates move beneath oceans, unseen but unstoppable. The media, however, refused to let it rest. A former janitor, now CSO, rumored to be engaged to the most powerful woman in the private tech sector. Headlines exploded with speculation. Was it a publicity stunt? A scandal? A power play? Victoria didn't respond. She never did. And Sam, predictably, avoided reporters like he'd been trained in espionage. But in the shadows, not everyone was amused. Inside Casadine Global, the inner circle began to stir. Men who had waited years for promotions that never came. Women who had built entire divisions from the ground up only to be skipped over for him. Sam, a man who didn't wear suits. A man who spoke softly, listened more than he talked, and refused to attend the quarterly gala. A man who didn't play the game, because he didn't have to. They whispered behind closed doors. Meetings that excluded Victoria. Emails that vanished after sending. They weren't angry at Sam. They were afraid, because he saw through them. And Victoria listened to him in ways she never listened to anyone. It began subtly. Delays in projects. Missed numbers. Memos altered after Sam signed off. Then, one Monday morning, the internal server crashed. Hard. Terabytes of confidential data gone. Investigators were brought in. Fingers pointed. And in the chaos, a damning report was discovered on Sam's computer, evidence of insider trading, data leaks, unauthorized board access. Victoria called him into her office. The air was tense. She sat behind her desk, lips tight, hands folded as if trying to cage the tremor beneath them. Is it true? She asked. Sam didn't flinch. You think I'd do that? She didn't answer. He stood silently, nodded once, and walked out. No defense. No anger. Just a quiet resignation, like a man who had seen this trap before and knew its scent. The board demanded action. Victoria suspended him. The media turned savage. Headlines like From Mop to Malware, the fall of Sam Wells littered every screen. But in the dark, Victoria couldn't sleep. She stared at the chessboard in her penthouse, replaying moves, rewinding conversations, remembering little things. How Sam always logged off before leaving, how he hated technology, how he didn't even use a smartphone. It didn't add up. Then she remembered something. 2 weeks before the breach, Sam had handed her a USB drive. Just in case, he'd said, people are watching. She had tossed it in her drawer without a second thought. At 3:17 a.m., she plugged it in, and everything unraveled. It wasn't a virus. It was surveillance footage, grainy but clear. A conference room. After hours. Board members she trusted. Voices she recognized. And in the center of it all, her CFO, Morgan Hale, shaking hands with a man from a rival firm. He's too close to her, Morgan was saying. The janitor has her, he'll bury us all if he doesn't wake up. Another voice, then make her wake up. Victoria felt the ground tilt under her. She played the rest. Passwords were forged. Logs rewritten. The breach orchestrated to frame Sam. The brilliance of it all, it would have worked. It nearly did. By dawn, Victoria had fired 6 executives. Morgan Hale was escorted out of the tower in handcuffs. Press releases were issued, apologies made. And Sam? She found him in the park, feeding pigeons. He didn't look at her when she sat beside him. Just tossed crumbs to the birds like they were old friends. I doubted you, she said. I know. I almost destroyed you. I've survived worse. She turned to face him. I trust you more than anyone, and I still let them break that. Why? Sam finally looked at her. Because you're human, and humans lose sometimes, even the ones who always win. She exhaled, long and slow. Come back. He smiled faintly. Didn't know I left. They walked back to the tower together, not as CEO and janitor, not as lovers, not even as friends, but as something else entirely. 2 players who understood that sometimes the most important moves are the ones no one sees. The kind that don't show up on the board until years later. Inside, the staff parted for them like a tide. Sam wore no suit. Victoria wore no mask. They stood before the elevator. He looked at her. So, he said, you gonna marry me or what? She smirked. Best 2 out of 3. She didn't answer him right away. Not with words. Instead, she pressed the elevator button and turned slightly, just enough for her eyes to catch his. There was something unspoken there, an almost smile that dared him to follow, to continue the game neither of them fully understood, yet neither could walk away from. As the elevator doors slid open, the golden interior seemed to glow with the warmth of something new, something unscripted in a life that had always been planned. He stepped inside beside her. Cassadine Tower felt different now, not just because half of its leadership had been gutted in a single day, but because word was spreading. The janitor who'd been invisible now sat second only to the queen herself. Some welcomed it. Some seethed. All watched. And the world beyond was watching too. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at Cassadine's private office. Handwritten, wax-sealed, addressed to Samuel Wells. The handwriting was old-fashioned, deliberate. Inside, on ivory paper, was a single line. We remember you from Zurich. There was no signature, no return address. Sam stood with a note in hand, brows furrowed. Zurich. He hadn't heard that name in years. Victoria watched him from across the room. "What is it?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, a ghost. That night, Sam vanished. No calls, no emails, no trace. His apartment was left untouched. His badge remained in his drawer. But he was gone. Victoria activated every contact she had. Government, private investigators, hackers from the darker corners of the web. Nothing. Sam had disappeared like smoke in the wind. 3 days passed. Then 6. On the 7th day, a chessboard appeared on Victoria's desk. No note, no courier, just a board, set mid-game, with a white queen missing. She stared at it for a long time. Then she picked up the black knight and whispered, "Zurich." Back in 1993, before she was a CEO, before he was a janitor, there had been a tournament in Zurich, an invitation-only chess summit for the world's most brilliant, most dangerous, and most secret minds. Victoria had declined. Sam had gone. And something had happened there, something buried beneath years of silence and shadows. Now it was rising again. Victoria made the call. The jet was fueled. The tower left in trusted hands. And she boarded it not as a billionaire queen of Cassadine Global, but as a player stepping back onto a board much older than any business deal. She flew to Zurich alone. Upon arrival, a package waited for her in the hotel room. No name, no note, just an address, a crumbling church in the old city, doors chained, windows blackened. At midnight, she arrived, wearing nothing but black coat, gloves, purpose. She stepped through the open gate. Inside, rows of broken pews led to an altar transformed into a chessboard 10 feet wide. And across from it, under a stained glass window shattered decades ago, stood Sam. He didn't speak, didn't smile, but he moved the first piece. Victoria narrowed her eyes. Pawn to e4. She responded in kind. Pawn to e5. The game wasn't for marriage this time. It was for the truth. Each move unlocked a memory. Each counter move reopened a wound. With every piece they moved, shadows moved with them. Figures in the balconies, unseen observers from the past. She played her bishop. He sacrificed a rook. They circled each other like warriors who had once been lovers, then strangers, now both. Mid-game, he spoke. They told me I had to disappear, that I was too dangerous, that the things I saw. You didn't tell me, she said, voice tight. You wouldn't have let me go. I still won't. He looked at her then, really looked, and in his eyes was a full storm of everything unspoken. Grief, loyalty, brilliance, and something close to love. But the game continued, until, at last, he leaned forward, moved his queen to h5, and whispered, check. Victoria stayed at the board. Her defenses were gone, her king cornered. And still, she smiled, you never left Zurich, did you? I left my name behind, but not my game. She tipped her king over. Then let's stop pretending this is just about us. Behind the altar, a hidden door creaked open. A man stepped forward, one of the Zurich committee, long thought dead. Welcome back, Victoria. Welcome back, Samuel. The next match begins now. The air in the ruined church grew heavier, thick with the scent of old stone and betrayal. Dust swirled in the fractured light pouring through the stained glass window, casting broken saints across the floor like shattered blessings. Victoria turned to face the man who had emerged from the shadows, tall, ageless, with a kind of posture that belonged to kings or executioners. He wore no insignia, no expression, only silence, like a judge awaiting confession. Samuel's jaw tightened. Gregory, he said, the name like a stone dropped in a still lake. Victoria tilted her head slightly, studying the figure. You're supposed to be dead. Gregory smiled faintly. And you're supposed to be retired from the game. She stepped forward. Then what is this? Another test? Another stage play where we're the pawns? No, Gregory said softly. You've graduated. You're not pawns. You're queens now. He gestured to the great chessboard at the altar. But this time, something was different. The pieces were made of glass, each one filled with tiny devices, blinking red, humming faintly. Victoria stepped closer and realized they weren't just ornamental. They were linked, wired. Each move, Each capture would trigger something real. Every square is a city, Grigori said. Every piece holds power, data, infrastructure, secrets that could bend governments. Sam's face darkened. So that's what this is now? A war with rules. It's always been war, Grigori said. We just gave it a board so no one noticed. Victoria's eyes scanned the balcony. More figures now, cloaked, still, watching. Not ghosts, not myths. The Zurich syndicate, thought to be disbanded decades ago. She had once received an offer to join. She declined. Now they were calling again. Sam looked at her, the weight of history in his gaze. If we play, people die. If we don't, she said, they already have. They stood at the board. Grigori's voice echoed. The game is Zero King. No resets. No mercy. You win. You take the syndicate. You lose. He didn't finish the sentence. Victoria took the white side this time. Sam stood beside her, not across, with her, and the game began. The first move was quiet, pawn to d4, but it echoed like thunder. On a screen in the rafters, a live satellite feed blinked, and somewhere in South America, a data facility lost power. Black responded, pawn to d5. In Tokyo, a major server bank surged online. Each move triggered events around the world. Blackouts in Berlin, financial crashes in Lagos, missile launches redirected midair, private military units recalled from classified missions. This wasn't chess. This was global cyber warfare wrapped in the illusion of strategy. Halfway through the game, Victoria faltered. She had played knight to c3, unknowingly activating a hidden protocol, one that began draining her personal offshore accounts, bankrupting charities she had built, burning bridges in real time. Grigori smirked. Every piece has consequences. Sam leaned in, whispered, play like you did that first day, when you didn't care what anyone thought. Just a board, just the truth. She stared at the pieces, at her hands, and then, slowly, began to reclaim control. Rook to f5. A server farm rerouted. Bishop to e3. A counter signal jammed enemy surveillance. Queen to h6. A leak stopped before it reached global media. With every breath, every move, they took back space. Grigori frowned. Victoria spoke without looking up. You taught us to see the whole board. You just never imagined we'd see you. Then, with a calm only earned by those who've lost everything and survived, Sam reached for the queen. Check. Grigori's calm cracked for the first time. No. Victoria moved in. Checkmate is inevitable. The only question is how many kings fall with you. Grigori reached for a hidden device in his coat, but a figure from the balcony dropped down in silence, pinning his arm behind him. It was a woman, mid-40s, eyes sharp as blades. Alice, Sam whispered. She smiled. Didn't think I'd miss the reunion, did you? Grigori was dragged away. The other observers began to disperse. Victoria and Sam stood alone at the board, pieces still trembling. Light still blinking. You always play 3 moves ahead, she said quietly. I played this whole thing, he replied, just to get back here with you. She stepped toward him. No more games. He raised a brow. Maybe one last match. And he reached for a pawn.